Let's get started with our first news. Michael "Venom" Paige and Carlos Prates actually ran into each other after UFC 319 last night, and that little encounter may have just set up an exciting fight for later this year. After the event, Paige told reporters he'd be more than open to fighting Carlos Prates at UFC Rio in October. Now remember, Prates initially had his sights set on Leon Edwards, calling for a massive welterweight showdown. But when MVP's name came up, Prates didn't hesitate. He said he was also down for that matchup, adding that he wants to fight in Brazil on October 11th. If the UFC can book it, he'll be there. When asked directly if he'd take the fight, MVP didn't hold back. He said, "Ooh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. He even joked that Prates wouldn't be catching him with that spinning elbow. But beyond the humor, Paige explained that this is exactly the kind of fight he's been calling out for. If Prates is ready, he'll gladly raise his hand. He also emphasized how much it would mean to finally fight in Brazil. MVP revealed he's had fans from Brazil for many years, even recalling when people called him the UK Anderson Silva, which he considered a huge compliment. Despite all that support, he's never fought there, and he feels now is the perfect time. The question of timing came up since October 11th is right around the corner. Paige responded with confidence, saying it sounds perfect because he took no serious damage at UFC 319. His legs were a little sore, which is normal after opponents attack with kicks, but that kind of soreness heals in a week. In his eyes, the turnaround makes complete sense. He even said he'd love for the fight to be a 5-round co-main event. In fact, he prefers longer fights because it gives him more time to truly showcase his skills. Of course, many people pointed out that Prates has also been calling out Leon Edwards. MVP acknowledged that, but said the Leon fight only makes sense in the UK. If the UFC returns to London in March, then that's when it should happen. Laughing, Paige said his career feels like it's being perfectly lined up. October in Brazil, March in the UK, and he's absolutely loving it. Interestingly enough, the same night Carlos Prates was asked about facing Michael Paige. He didn't dismiss it at all. He made it clear that Leon Edwards remains his first option because he wants to fight the very best to prove he is the best. But if Leon doesn't take the fight, then Prates is ready for anyone who steps into the cage in Rio, and that includes MVP. Prates even admitted that Michael Paige has inspired him for a long time. He respects his style and thinks it would be a very exciting matchup. When asked about the idea of a 5-round fight, he said he enjoyed his last 5-round experience, so he'd be open to it, but first he wants to celebrate his win, then get back in the gym before deciding if he prefers 3 rounds or 5. What makes this even more compelling is that MVP and Prates crossed paths multiple times after UFC 319. First backstage and then again later at the club. Both encounters were all respect. No trash talk, no hostility, just two fighters showing admiration for each other. And when that kind of respect exists, it usually leads to fireworks inside the cage. Fans know that when the octagon door closes, both men will be ready to put on an absolute show. Before moving to the next news, we have one quick request for you. We're constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That's why we'd truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now moving on to the second big news. Michael Bisping has made a bold and eye-opening statement about the state of the middleweight division after UFC 319. According to the former champion and current analyst, the only man who might be able to give Khamzat Chimaev a true challenge at 85 pounds is none other than Reinier de Ridder. That's right, Bisping believes RDR is Khamzat's biggest threat right now. This comes in the aftermath of Khamzat's absolute destruction of Dricus du Plessis at UFC 319. Chimaev dominated from the opening bell, showcasing his relentless grappling and suffocating pressure that simply overwhelmed du Plessis. The performance left the MMA community buzzing, but also asking one important question: who could possibly hang with this guy on the ground? When asked for his take, Bisping didn't hesitate. He immediately pointed to Reinier de Ridder, the Dutch grappler and former One Championship double champion. Bisping explained that de Ridder has the size, the grappling credentials, and most importantly, the high-level jiu-jitsu to at least test Khamzat. He said RDR's skill set is unique because he combines length, leverage, and technique in ways that very few middleweights can. Bisping even went so far as to say that Khamzat becoming champion could be a disaster for the middleweight division. Not because Chimaev isn't great, in fact, Bisping praised him as one of the scariest talents we've ever seen at AT5, but because he's so dominant that nobody else may stand a chance. If Khamzat keeps running through contenders the way he just did, the division could be in for a very long and one-sided era. Breaking down De Ridder's chances, Bisping noted that his elite grappling and submission game could at least force Khamzat into deeper waters. De Ridder is not someone who gets bullied on the ground. He's strong in the clinch, dangerous off his back, and has proven submission skills from multiple positions. Still, even with those tools, Bisping admitted that it would be an incredibly tough fight. At best, De Ridder could slow Khamzat down, but it would still be a massive challenge to stop him. Sean Strickland has also made his case in recent weeks, saying he is the guy who can beat Chimaev. Strickland's cardio, striking volume, and toughness have carried him far in the division, but Bisping isn't convinced. In his eyes, Strickland's defensive wrestling and grappling defense aren't on the level needed to stop Chimaev's relentless style. Bisping made it clear that while Strickland is tough, Rainier De Ridder remains the only fighter who even has a real shot at troubling Khamzat in the cage. As for Chimaev himself, the newly crowned middleweight champion already has big plans. He has openly stated that he wants his first title defense to take place in Abu Dhabi, a location that has become almost like a second home for him. Dana White has confirmed that he loves the idea, and with the UFC's schedule lining up, we could be seeing Khamzat defend his middleweight belt in just 2 months' time. If that happens, the big question remains. Will it be Strickland, De Ridder, or someone else who steps up to face him? Whoever it is, one thing is certain, the middleweight division has officially entered the Khamzat Chimaev era, and it may be here for a long time. Moving on to another huge headline, Khamzat Chimaev has already received a direct threat from Anthony Hernandez, who boldly declared he will drown him. This fiery statement comes just days after Khamzat broke UFC records in jaw-dropping fashion. In his most recent fight, Chimaev landed a staggering 529 total strikes against Dricus du Plessis, shattering Max Holloway's long-standing record of 447 against Calvin Kattar. Now, to put that into perspective, Holloway's performance back in 2021 was considered one of the most dominant striking displays in UFC history. Many believed it was a record that might never be broken. Yet here comes Khamzat, not just edging past it, but absolutely smashing it with over 80 more strikes. Sure, not every single shot carried knockout power, but the pace, pressure, and complete domination were unlike anything fans had ever seen before. For years, Khamzat's critics circled around one major question: does he have the cardio to maintain his insane pace for multiple rounds? Time and time again, skeptics claimed that if he couldn't finish a fight early, he would eventually fade. Against du Plessis, Khamzat answered those doubts in emphatic style. Not only did he keep up the relentless output, but he also showed he could weaponize his conditioning just as effectively as his wrestling and ground and pound. The fight itself was a one-sided beatdown. Du Plessis, a warrior with incredible durability, looked absolutely smothered. Every time he tried to move, Khamzat was one step ahead. Every time he tried to breathe, Khamzat was already unloading another barrage of punches and elbows. Even in the rare moments when it looked like du Plessis might turn the tide, like that brief scramble near the end, Khamzat calmly brushed it off. He later explained that he was never in danger, admitting he only ended up on bottom because he was chasing a submission. In short, Khamzat looked untouchable. But now the question becomes, what's next? Because after a performance like that, contenders are already lining up to take their shot at the Wolf. Anthony "Fluffy" Hernandez is the loudest of them all. On one of the hottest win streaks in the division, Hernandez is full of confidence. Speaking to Spanish journalist Papa Legospi, he didn't mince words. He said he's ready to drag Khamzat into deep waters and flat out promised to drown him. Hernandez insisted he has the perfect style to give Khamzat nightmares: the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the toughness, and above all, the gas tank. He vowed to make Khamzat work every single second of the fight. In his own words, "I'll drown him." But here's the real question. After what we just witnessed, is anyone in the middleweight division truly prepared for that storm? Names like Rainier De Ridder, Caio Borralho, and Nassourdine Imavov have also been thrown into the mix as potential challengers. Each brings something unique to the table, but right now, Khamzat looks nearly unstoppable. The middleweight division is heating up, but the man at the center of it, Khamzat Chimaev, just reminded the world why he's one of the most feared fighters alive. Now on to another news. Dana White has officially suspended heavyweight prospect Alvin Hines for using PEDs. This is a major blow for a young fighter who was just starting to make his name in the UFC. Hines won't be returning to the octagon for his second UFC bout anytime soon, as he's been suspended for 1 year after testing positive for multiple banned substances. The news comes at a time when the UFC has been cracking down hard on fighters who try to gain an edge illegally. Hines was coming off a unanimous decision loss to Jonata Denise at UFC 317, which was his first professional defeat. For many fans, that loss was expected to be a learning experience, the type of setback that helps a young prospect grow. But instead, the bigger headline became his suspension, and not just for one substance, but for a cocktail of them. According to the official commission report, Hines tested positive for anabolic steroids, testosterone metabolites, and tamoxifen, which is classified as a hormone and metabolic modulator. This wasn't a borderline case or a small slip-up. This was a full-scale violation. Tamoxifen in particular is often used to mask or regulate the side effects of steroid use, which makes the test results even more damaging to his credibility. What's interesting is that the statement also revealed that Hines fully cooperated with the investigation. He admitted he had been using these substances before he ever signed with the UFC. His explanation was that he believed the substances would clear out of his system by the time he made his debut. Clearly, that assumption was wrong. The test results showed without question that performance-enhancing drugs were still present in his body, and the commission had no choice but to hand down a suspension. As always, the MMA community reacted swiftly online. Some fans mocked him, saying it was obvious from his physique and power that he had been using something unnatural. Others were more critical of the UFC as a whole, pointing out the pattern where it's usually lower-level fighters getting caught while the bigger pay-per-view stars somehow avoid major suspensions. One fan wrote, "When was the last time a valuable fighter popped for steroids? What a coincidence." Another said, "I thought he was just a hard-working guy who finally got his shot, but nope, turns out he was cheating." The UFC's decision to suspend Hines for 1 year is consistent with what we've seen in similar cases, but the punishment still feels heavy given his situation. For a fighter still at the very beginning of his career, a full year on the sidelines is a serious setback. Not only will he miss out on valuable fight experience, but he'll also lose momentum at a time when every opportunity matters. Perhaps the biggest issue for Hines moving forward is his reputation. Once you're labeled a cheater in this sport, it's almost impossible to shake that image. Even if he serves his suspension and comes back clean, fans and opponents alike will always question whether his success is truly natural. For a young heavyweight with only a handful of fights, this could be devastating for his long-term career. Now moving on to another big story. Jon Jones is teasing a UFC comeback again. Ever since he announced his retirement earlier this year, fans have been in limbo, wondering what's next for the former light heavyweight king and reigning heavyweight champion. Jones had already re-entered the testing pool a few months ago, which instantly sparked speculation that he wasn't truly done. Still, no official fight has been booked, and the uncertainty has left fans questioning how genuine his retirement actually was. At a recent fan event, Jones spoke candidly about his mindset. He admitted that he was actually serious about retirement when he first said it. According to him, he had made peace with walking away after achieving everything he set out to do in the sport, winning titles in 2 divisions, cementing his legacy and holding his spot as one of the greatest fighters of all time. But then came the twist. Jones smiled and told the crowd everyone loves a good comeback. Of course, the crowd rolled their eyes, and honestly, who can blame them? Jon Jones has teased retirements, comebacks, and career shifts so many times that it's hard to keep track anymore. From potential super fights at heavyweight to possible matchups with legends like Stipe Miocic to even wild talk of fighting Francis Ngannou in cross-promotional bouts, Jones has always kept fans guessing, but more often than not, those big announcements never actually materialize. His retirement this time lasted barely a heartbeat, and already we're back to talking about his return. So the real question now is whether he's serious this time, and if so, who would even be his opponent? Some fans believe the UFC might finally push for the long-rumored Jones vs. Miocic fight, which was supposed to happen last year before Jones pulled out with injury. Others think a fight against Tom Aspinall, the current interim heavyweight champion, is the only matchup that truly makes sense. After all, Aspinall has been vocal about wanting to unify the titles, and beating Jon Jones would give him instant GOAT-level credibility. Still, there's doubt. Critics point out that Jones is 37 years old, has been plagued by injuries and hasn't fought since his quick submission win over Cyril Game back in March 2023. Sitting out for long stretches has never helped fighters, and even though Jones is one of the greatest of all time, Father Time eventually catches everyone. The UFC has also moved forward with new stars, and Jones risks being left behind if he doesn't actually commit. Fans online were split in their reactions. Some were excited, saying they'd watch Jon fight anybody at any time. Others rolled their eyes, writing things like, "Retirement number 8, we'll see if this one sticks." Another fan posted, "I'll believe Jon Jones is fighting again when I see him inside the cage, not before." For now, it's all talk. But if history tells us anything, Jon Jones loves the spotlight, and the UFC loves a blockbuster return. Whether this comeback actually happens and who he fights remains one of the sport's biggest unanswered questions. And finally, circling back to our opening story, Michael "Venom" Paige versus Carlos Prates at UFC Rio is starting to feel less like speculation and more like reality. Over the past few weeks, both fighters have been dropping hints, but now things are looking concrete. According to multiple reports, both Paige and Prates have verbally agreed to the bout. Nothing is signed just yet, but the date being targeted is October 11th in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, a perfect stage for this stylistic clash. Paige, who made his UFC debut earlier this year, has been eager to stay active. After his successful first outing, he made it clear that he wanted quick turnarounds, and right now he says he feels fully healthy and ready to go. That's big news for fans who worried he might sit out waiting for a bigger name or a higher-ranked opponent. Instead, he's showing he wants to test himself and continue building momentum in the welterweight division. On the other side, Carlos Prates has quickly made a name for himself as a dangerous and fearless competitor. He's said multiple times that he's willing to fight anybody, and Paige is exactly the type of opponent who excites him. Prates has also openly praised Paige's unique striking style, calling him a puzzle that very few fighters have ever solved. That level of respect, combined with his willingness to go toe-to-toe, makes him the perfect dance partner for this matchup. What makes this even more interesting is the fact that the two have already crossed paths outside the cage. Reports say they ran into each other backstage at events and even at a nightclub in Brazil. Instead of trash talk or hostility, it was all mutual respect. A refreshing sight in an era where so many fighters rely on heated rivalries to sell fights. Both men genuinely seem to like each other, which only adds to the intrigue. This one doesn't need fake drama. The fight itself is the selling point. Put simply, this is all the ingredients of a fight fans won't want to miss: style, respect, danger, and the electric atmosphere of UFC Rio.